Good morning, and I'm Jennifer Purcell, your host Living with Invisible Learning Challenge. And before I start today's podcast, I wanted to let you know that this podcast is sponsored by Patreon, which is a platform where you can create products to sell. Basically, what I have on there are audios of the podcast with or without ads. And I have transcripts of the podcast also on there that people can buy and purchase and then read the transcripts or listen to the audio. And then those cost about 10 or $5 each. And we had our first, about few couple months ago, we had our first paid member. So thank you to that person. I'm not going to mention her name just for privacy, but I wanted to thank her for that. She knows who she is. So thank you. Then we also have sponsorship from BetterHelp, which is a therapy, and they are online therapy company. And even though I don't use them personally, I know that they're a good company. And I have had 8 years of therapy and I continue to receive counseling, and it has helped me a lot with changing things in my life and changing how I think about things and how I was able to get through the different traumas in my life or the different at those times, and how I am who I am today and how I became the person I am today. And if I sound a little choked up or this is a little difficult for me to record, it's just because it's not always easy for me to talk about those things. So that's why. Um, But I wanted to let you know that if you want to use BetterHelp, I have a link that you can use and you will get 10% off your first month of being with them. So let me put that in the podcast description. And then there's also an Etsy shop that I have had for a few months, and I did sell some things on there. So basically, it is called Woven Differently. And it is for the podcast and for me to try to make a little bit of extra money. And basically, I knit some items, whether they're scarves or headbands. Those are the two that I have on there right now. They're round scarves, or they're called cowls, COWLS. And there's headbands on there with ribbon on the ends for tying it around your head. So mainly they're for women, but I will be making some more products that could be for males or women. Sorry, female or males, like bracelets. Sometimes guys like to wear bracelets. And I will also be trying to make some new products that I haven't done before, like afghans or little animals that I have patterns for. So there will be more coming, just might be a little slow because it is challenging for me to make these products with NLD. The fine motor skills is not an easy thing for me to do. So just a sec. Sorry, I had to take a water break. But yeah, so the fine motor skills of knitting isn't that easy for me to do. And sometimes when I'm following a pattern, I don't quite understand the instructions. So I have to look it up online to find a video to understand that part of the pattern. But I work through it the best I can. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll make like a fake item, or I'm experimenting with one of them right now and I'm making it for a friend so that it's like, okay, if I make a mistake, I don't feel so bad because it's for a friend. It's not for something I'm trying to sell. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there are some things I'm doing to help me fund this podcast. Anyways, let's get to the topic for today, which is when the words won't come, NLD and writer's block. In this episode, we will explore how nonverbal learning disability, NLD, impacts writing, why writer's block can hit harder for those with invisible learning challenges, and strategies to overcome it with compassion and creativity. So, welcome to Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I'm your host, Jennifer Purcell. If you've ever started, sorry, I'll start over. Welcome to Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I'm your host, Jennifer Purcell. If you've ever stared at a blank page and felt paralyzed, you're not alone. And if you are someone with NLD or an invisible learning challenge, writer's block can be more than a creative slump. It can feel like a shutdown or for your entire brain. Today, we're diving into the unique ways NLD affects writing, the emotional toll of perfectionism, and how we can move forward one word at a time. Let's begin with a quick refresher. Nonverbal learning disability is a brain based condition that affects spatial reasoning, executive functioning, organization, and social interpretation. But even though the word nonverbal is in the name, NLD absolutely affects verbal expression, especially writing. Let me repeat that. But even though the word nonverbal is in the name, NLD absolutely affects verbal expression, especially writing. Why? Because writing isn't just words, it's organization, structure, visualizing where your ideas go, translating thoughts into a clear sequence. That's executive functioning, and that's one of the core struggles for those with NLD. Personally, writing has been both a gift and a frustration for me. I love language, but when I sit down to write, it often feels like I know what I want to say in my head, but I can't quite get it out the way I imagine it. References NLD.org, academic challenges, written expression, and understood.org, why kids with NLD struggle with writing. For many writers, writer's block means a temporary creative drought. For those of us with NLD, it can feel like a total freeze. Why? Here are a few reasons. Difficulty with sequencing, not knowing what comes first, next, last. Overwhelmed with open ended tasks, writing anything you want can be paralyzing. Um, Fear of making mistakes, perfectionism, anyone. Slow processing speed. It just takes longer to plan and compose. There have been times when I have had a clear deadline and still spent hours staring at a blinking cursor. Not because I was lazy, but because my brain was looping, trying to find the perfect entry point. This is from Learning Disabilities Association of America, NLD, and Written Language, and National Center for Learning Disabilities. When organizing thoughts is the hardest part. And I want to add here, when I was in college, about 6 years ago, in 20 from 2014 to 2018, um, my mom helped me a lot with writing. I had a lot of writing assignments because I was a sociology major, and she would help me proofread my essays and help me write them and make them flow well and make them have good sentence structure and make them good sound well and make them make sense to not only me but to the professor without reading any of the material I had to read. I did that. But I bring this up because one of the things she came up with that was helpful to me, and maybe this will be helpful to you. I think I've brought this up before, but I haven't talked about it in a while, is called the stairs of logic. Basically, we would use that to try to structure an essay or a paragraph, and we would think, okay, what has to go first for this to make sense? And then what comes next after that? And then, like, kind of like with a thesis statement, you usually have an argument, and then you have an hook, you have an introduction, and you have a conclusion, and you have, might not be saying those in the right order, but you have those things in an essay. And so she was calling it the stairs of logic because that was a funny name for me, and was trying to help me laugh and was trying to help me think logically more, and not so much of the ladybugs in the instead of thinking more of the ladybugs in the forest, or sorry, instead of thinking of the ladybugs on the tree, on the leaves. She wanted me to think of the trees in the forest and think more big picture, which is not easy to do when you have NLD. You can see it's not easy for me to even describe because I tend to think right away of the details, not the big picture. So that's what I was trying to say. I have a migraine right now, so it's not easy for me to record this. Anyways, next segment. Let's talk feelings. Writer's block with NLD is just frustrating. It can feel deeply personal. We might feel embarrassed to ask for help, ashamed of how long it takes us, anxious that we'll never finish or that what we write won't be good enough. This emotional layer adds to the block. It's not just a skills issue, it's self-esteem, it's fear. And if you've ever cried in front of a blank Word document, me too. Writer and educator Maryanne says reading and writing are not natural processes. They're built by the brain, close quote. So if your brain is wired differently, of course, writing will feel differently. That doesn't mean you're not a writer. That was a whole quote from her, actually. So that was from Maryanne Wolf. Proust, The Squid is the title of her piece. And from Psychology Today, Writing, Anxiety, and the Neurodiverse Brain was the title of their piece. And another personal thing, when I was in grade school or middle school, actually probably both, and high school, and I would try to write, I remember it was so frustrating. Sometimes I would cry just trying to write a sentence or a paragraph. That was before I knew about NLD. And just a sec. I don't know. So basically, I would cry because I was frustrated with myself of not being able to write easily. And then I remember when I got better at doing it in high school, when I was applying for when I was going through the college applications with my brother, I got better at writing because I knew I had to get better for that. And I knew that if I didn't get better, I probably wasn't going to get into college, and I wanted to get into college. Um, and my brother stuck with me. He helped me a lot with those. Thank you, Jonathan. And we did it together. And that's probably one of the reasons, not probably, that is one of the reasons I got into Berkeley and got accepted with those papers. But I'm bringing that up because when you have people who can help you, like my brother did, he had the same prompts I had when he was applying to college because he's only 5 years older than me. So he knew what the prompts were because they use them for 5 years and then they come up with new ones. So that was an advantage to me. So that was helpful. I started working on them that summer. They were due in November on Thanksgiving Day, I think. And I remember right when I was going to hit the submit button the day before Thanksgiving, we found out that there was one more paper left. He had forgotten there were 3 papers instead of 2 papers. And we're like, crap. But we decided to stay up that whole day. This was in the morning when we were doing this, and write another paper because that was going to make it or break it probably. And we did that together. I've talked about that on this podcast before. And we wrote that paper together and then submitted it that night before Thanksgiving. And mom was, cooking in the kitchen. Usually we were helping her, but we couldn't because we were doing this and this was important. And then we submitted it, and then you just have to wait until March or April, I think, is usually when you hear back from colleges. So, yeah, there's a lot. So, number 4, what helps? So, how do we move forward? Here are some tools and mindsets that helped me and others with NLD. Use outlines or visual maps. Get the structure down before you write. Tools like mind maps or even sticky notes on a wall can help you see your ideas. Talk it out first. Use speech to text apps. Record your thoughts like you're telling a friend, then transcribe it. Chunk the task. Don't try to write the whole thing. Start with just the introduction or just the bullet points or even a title. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Give yourself permission to write badly. You can always edit later, but you can't edit a blank page. That's a good one. Compassion over perfection. Remind yourself that messy first drafts are still progress. I like that one. And here's the truth. All writers struggle, but your voice, shaped by your experiences of NLD, has a perspective the world needs. And that was from the Writer's Guide to Overcoming Procrastination from the Medium and the NVLD Project Writing Supports Toolkit and Grammarly blog, How to Write When You Have Executive Dysfunction. The personal story. Quote, a few months ago, I was trying to write an article about living with migraines and NLD. I had all the ideas but couldn't organize them, so I recorded myself speaking for 5 minutes. I didn't overthink it. I just talked. Then I used a transcription tool and edited it from there. That article ended up being one of my most honest pieces, and it started from a moment of total block. Sometimes our best writing comes when we stop trying to write perfectly and just tell the truth. Yes, that was me, or about me, I should say. Wrap up. If you live with NLD and struggle with writing, you are not alone. You are not broken. You're learning to work with your brain, and that's a powerful thing. Thank you for listening to Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. If this episode resonates with you, please share it with someone else navigating the same journey. And remember, your words matter, even if they take a little longer to come. And I will include all those references in the show notes. Thank you for listening today.